Today I'm going to teach you a very beautiful chapter, that is packing. This story, Packing, has been taken from Three Men in a Boat written by Jerome Kechero. So let's read the story. The narrator Jerome said that he would pack. He had pride on his packing. Packing was one of those many things that he felt he knew more about than any other person living. He himself was surprised over how many such things were in which he was better than any other person in the world. He had impressed the fact upon George and Harris, and told them that they had better leave the whole matter of packing entirely to him. They fell into, that is, they accepted the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny or strange about it. George put on a pipe and spread himself over at the easy chair. There was an easy chair, so George spread over it. And Harry cocked his legs, that is, he put his legs on the table and lit a cigar. The narrator did not intend, that is, he did not mean that. He meant to boss the job, and Harris and George quarter about under his directions. That is, the narrator wanted George and Harris to do unimportant things under his directions, pushing them aside every now and then. In fact, he wanted to teach them how to do packing. He says that nothing irritated him more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when he was packing. The narrator then says that once he lived with a man who used to make him mad that way. He used to loll, that is, sit or lie, on the sofa and watch him doing things by the hours together. He said that it did him real good to look on at him messing about. He said that it did him real good to look on him messing about. That is, messing about means doing things badly. The narrator says that he was not like that because he could not sit still. He could not sit quiet and see another man slaving and working. He could not see another man working hard like a slave. He wanted to get up and superintend. He wanted to get up and superintend, that is, see what is happening, and walk round with his hands in his pocket and tell him what to do. It was his energetic nature. It was his energetic nature. He can't help it. That is, Jerome could not stop that. The narrator says that he did not say anything but started packing. It seemed a longer job than he had thought it to be. But he got the bag finished at last and sat on it and strapped it. Just then Harris asked him if he was not going to put the boots in. The boots were still out. The narrator looked round and found he had forgotten the boots. That was just like Harris, because only Harris could do that. He could not have told a word until the narrator had got the bag shut and strapped. At this, George laughed, one of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. He says that George and Harris made him wild with anger. The narrator opened the bag and packed the boots in. But when he was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to him. That is, a horrible idea came into his mind. He was not sure whether he had packed his toothbrush or not. He did not know how it was, but he never knew whether he had packed his toothbrush or not. The narrator's toothbrush always troubled him. He always forgot to pack his toothbrush. The narrator, the narrator says that his toothbrush was a thing that haunted him. That is, his toothbrush always lingered in his mind, always stayed in his mind when he was traveling and made his life a misery. He dreamed, the narrator dreamed that he had not packed it and woke up in a cold perspiration and got out of bed and hunted for it. That is, he searched for his toothbrush. And in the morning, he packed it before using it and had to unpack again to get it. And it was always the last thing he the turned out of the bag. And then he repacked and forgot it and had to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station, wrapped up in his pocket handkerchief. The narrator had to turn everything out, but he could not find his toothbrush. He had to search for it. He found George's and Harris's toothbrush over 18 times. That is, he found their toothbrush several times, but could not find his own. He put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. Then he found his own toothbrush inside a boot. Then he had to repack the bag once more. When when the narrator had finalized packing, George asked if soap had been packed. When the narrator had finished packing, George asked him if soap had been packed. At this, the narrator said that he did not care whether the soap had been packed or not. He slammed, that is, he closed the bag with a sound and found that he had packed his spectacles in it and then had to reopen it. In this way, the bag got shut up finally at 5 minutes past 10. So this was the time, 10 hours 5 minutes. 5 minutes past 10 at night was the time when Jeremy packed the bag. After that, there remained the hampers, that is, the basket for packing food to do. After that remained the hampers to be packed. Harris said that they should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours' time and thought that he and George had better do the rest. So George and Harris decided to do the hampers, that is, pack the food basket. The narrator agreed. The narrator agreed and sat down. And George and Harris started doing the hampers. They started packing the food basket. George and Harris started in a light-hearted spirit. That is, they did not take their work seriously. So they started they started in a light-hearted spirit. It was clear from their ways that they wanted to show the narrator how to do the hamper, that is, how to pack the food basket. The narrator made no comment, he only waited. According to him, George and Harris were the worst packers in the world. According to the narrator, George and Harris were the worst packers in the world. The narrator looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the things would soon become exciting. As predicted, as predicted by the narrator, the things became exciting as they started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show what they could do and get one interested. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it. And they had to pick out the tomato with a spoon. After that, it was George's turn, and he stepped on the butter. The narrator did not say anything. He came over and sat on the edge of the table. The narrator did not say anything. He came and sat over and he came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. He it irritated George. It irritated George and Harris, and both it irritated George and Harris both because it made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then could not find them when they wanted them, and they packed pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies. Pies means murabbe. They upset salt over everything. They upset salt over everything. It means they उन लोगों ने salt हर चीज के ऊपर salt गिरा दिया. They upset salt over everything, and as for the butter, the narrator says that he had never seen two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in his whole life than they did. After George had removed the butter from his slippers, they tried to put it in the kettle. It would not go in, and what was in would not come out. They at last scraped it out and put it on a chair, and Harry sat on it, and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. George took a note, staring at the empty seat, that he had put it down on the chair. Harris supported him, saying that he had seen him do it himself, not a minute ago, or just a minute ago. They again started moving around the room looking for the butter, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. George said that it was the most extraordinary thing he had ever heard of. Harry said it was so mysterious. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. He indignantly, that is angrily, exclaimed that it had been there all the time. Harris asked, spinning round where it had been. George rode flying after him and to stand still. In this way, they got the butter off and packed it in the teapot. Montmorency was also there all the time. His ambition in life was to get in the way and be sworn at. Montmorency is the narrator's pet dog. So Montmorency was also there all the time. His ambition in life was to get in the way and be sworn at. If he could get anywhere where he was particularly not wanted and be a perfect nuisance, that is a troublesome thing, and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he felt his day had not been wasted. His highest aim and object was to get somebody stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour. And when he had succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit, that is pride, became quite unbearable. The narrator says that Montmorency came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed, and labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris and George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold damp nose that they wanted. He put his leg into the jam, and he disturbed the teaspoons, and then he pretended that the lemons were rats and got into the hamper and killed three of them before Harris could hit him with the frying pan. Harris said that the narrator had encouraged the dog, but he, but he said that he had not encouraged him. Harris said that the narrator had encouraged the dog, but the narrator said that he did not encourage him because the dog like him, that is, dog like Montmorency, did not want any encouragement. It was the natural original sin that was born in him and made him do things like that. The packing was done at 50 minutes past 12, that is 10 minutes when it was 10 minutes to 1 p.m. So the packing was done at 12:50. Harris sat on the big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George reflected that if anything was broken, it was broken. He also said that he was ready for bed. In fact, they all were ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with them that night, so they went upstairs. They tossed for beds, and Harris had to sleep with the narrator. Harris asked him whether he preferred to sleep inside or outside, at which he said that he preferred to sleep inside a bed. George asked him what time he would wake up. Harris wanted to be waked at 7, while the narrator at 6 because he wanted to write some letters. Harris and the narrator had a bit of argument over it, but at last they solved their difference and agreed to be waked up at 6:30 a.m. They asked George to wake up. They asked George to wake them up at 6:30. George made no answer. On going over, they found that he had been asleep for some time. So they placed a water container, a bath, where he could stumble into it on getting out in the morning and went to bed themselves. So, friends, this was the story. This was the paraphrase of the story packing written by Jerome K. Jerome. So, thank you for watching the video. If you like it, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.